All right, you're listening to the Brown Perspective. I'm Eduardo, and I'm here with RO.
What's happening?
Not much. I wanted to talk with you, get your thoughts on this initiative happening in Honduras, Roatan Prospera. It seems to me a very interesting development as we continue to talk about the importance of doing development in Latin America and bringing jobs and opportunities there, and in some ways helping individuals there have the type of life that they deserve, but then at the same time making sure that we don't corrupt or now I'm talking about the royal we, the capitalist
Mm-hmm.
uh, sort of type of system that doesn't care about Mother Earth, that doesn't care about cultural traditions, and that just cares about profits and technology. So, to me, when I came across this development, I thought it was really interesting because in some ways I thought like, why can they do this across the country? Why do they need to kind of set up these very particular special zones with very unique governance frameworks? And I also remember that you had spent some time in Honduras, so I wanted to get your thoughts since you have had a chance to see the conditions on the ground there.
Yeah, when I first came across this, I thought, yeah, an enclave run with its own private government by private industry. What can possibly go wrong here?
Banana Republic, anyone?
This is just an extension of something similar to charter schools. Now, charter cities,
Mm-hmm.
entire zone, economic development zones being run by private industry. and we don't want to get into all the problems with charter schools where eventually they just a lot of them end up leeching off of the government, off of taxpayer money. And in a way this seems similar to me where it's when I was reading the article, there's an article from Bloomberg as well. I was catching some of the keywords and phrases that were being used by the investors as
Mm-hmm.
saying tremendous opportunity, incredible outlook. I think there was something else. But those type of catchwords or vague words are the words that sometimes are actually hiding that what's really gonna happen is just exploitation and profit making or anything goes attitude just for the sake of profit under the guise of incredible opportunity for economic development and so forth. So perhaps this project it's coming from the right place. It could be that the founders of this are thinking that these governments in Central America very corrupt. They can't seem to get their act together. Let's bring some private money in there and let's try to create these zones where we create a different form of government that's free of corruption, that is there, that we're going to set up communities and housing for people, and we're going to encourage the best and the brightest to come over. But in one way, like even me just saying that, it already starts to sound an idolized version of and very naive version of what can happen. Because I even think the founder or one of the founders in the Bloomberg article mentioned that they're trying to set something up so that you don't have to worry about the type of corruption that happens in regular Honduras. And I thought, dude, man, money is gonna corrupt your development zone.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much pressure from the pressure that comes from the capitalist system is to exploit and generate profits at all cost. So either you exploit the environment or you start doing bribes or you start doing other things, but inevitably there's going to be some form of corruption going on. And so yeah, anyways, that type of language, it just when I was reading it, it automatically raised red flags for me.
Yeah, and as you say that, I know this article talks about it about economic development and employment zone. But in my mind, it just sounds like gentrification, right? Like let's get in there, get our people elected. And the other piece is that they are trying to draw investment from wealthy individuals, from tech companies and things like that. So to your point, they're trying to to say, hey, come send your money here, shelter your money here.
Mm-hmm.
We can put it to good use. There'll be low taxes. You'll have access to this beautiful um, Caribbean paradise, Central America paradise, and you have cheap labor, and you won't have to worry about all these other regulations that you may have to worry if you had to deal with the government, either there or in your country of origin.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think they were claiming that because this was one of the critiques of this, that this is just going to be another rich young rich boys playground. So the wealth comes in, and it's exclusively for the wealthy. And they were saying that they bring in people from Honduras, that they're hiring people for the carpentry or to be artists and so forth. And but realistically, though, if you're setting up a development zone like this, and it's for professionals, it's try to promote economic activity. Yeah, there might be some jobs for like janitors and other workers, but they won't be able to unionize. So who's gonna determine what's a fair wage for them, right? And also, if most of the jobs are that you're gonna most of the jobs that you're gonna fill from the local population are those manual jobs, are you also going to fill the professional jobs from the regular Honduran population? Well, we know that the university system probably doesn't graduate enough professionals to be able to fill those jobs. Or I don't know if that's going to be the case. That very likely they're trying to attract people from other countries to come in.
They would have to be investing
Exactly. They
in
would
their
need
schools right
they
now.
need a pipeline. Yeah, if they really care about helping the Honduran economy, then you need a pipeline to get your workers from Honduras. You can't just say we're going to bring people from Honduras, because ultimately what you're going to do also is, even if you do bring talent from Honduras, you're very likely to just bring those that are already well off in Honduras, the ones that have money to begin with to get a good education. And when I visited Roatan back in 2017, what became immediately clear right away is that this beautiful island, that it's a beautiful tourist destination, a lot of the land and the wealth is owned by either descendants of Europeans or foreigners. Very similar to Brazil as well. These like beautiful places up in the hills in Brazil, like an hour from Rio. Again, owned by descendants of the colonizers from Portugal. Straight down, like just passed from generation to generation. So all the wealth in these places is still owned by predominantly people that still have some connection to the history of colonization. And so even just coming into this island and then doing these projects on top of that, if you're benefiting the people of the island, you're probably also just benefiting the people that already had wealth to begin with. And so this disguised as an improvement for Honduras, without really addressing the divisions that are inherent in Honduras, you may just end up helping the population that was already wealthy, not really the people that need the help.
Yeah, it's
If it does,
colonization 3.0.
yeah, colonization 3.0, like modern private colonization. If indeed it does help in any way, because this is an experiment, so we don't really know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, and I think and I know that in Honduras there's already been some protests, and I think overall there's because I think people are smart. They know that there is an effort to try to basically, like you said, get one of the most beautiful islands there and try to do this project, which is really not going to bring opportunities across the board. So I think that people are going to try to fight it and bring attention to it. But then it also kind of begs the questions. Okay, so if this is not the the way to do development in Central and Latin America, then what is? And obviously, it has to be something that's more mindful and thoughtful about how you spread the the not only the profits but the gains, the benefits from for doing this type of um, of project in a place like Roatan and in Honduras.
Already, you see here that there's just an issue with transparency, which is usually the case when it comes to private industry, right? They're just not going to be as transparent. And at the end of the day, private industry is about profits. It's not about helping people as much as they try to pretend that we're going to help people. It's really how can I how, how can I take advantage of this unique opportunity to create and or expand my own wealth and create wealth really
Yeah,
because
which on it to itself is not bad, but it's just when there's that concentration of wealth by either just one company or a few individuals, I think that's when it becomes
yeah because
problematic.
yeah because so capitalism the inherent flaw and again I don't want to get into a whole because I'm not in no way a socialist but one of the critiques of capitalism is that you can't keep expanding forever and capitalism exploits in order for it to keep expanding a lot of it is exploitation and exploitation of the natural resources or exploitation of the working class. So what happens if this enclave becomes successful, so successful that they then start saying, oh, this is awesome, let's expand this. Well, now you're talking about dislocating the people from that island. So gentrification, right? You're gonna kick out the residents, or you're gonna make it so appealing that the residents that live there, they're gonna sell you their property for like chump change, and now you've taken their land and you've dispossessed them, and now you keep expanding and expanding, and all that sounds great because that's what it's supposed to do, right? It's so successful that you're expanding, but in reality, what you're doing is you're just doing gentrification. You're kicking out the people that natively live there, and you're just replacing them with the wealthy class that has its own enclave and its own laws, independent of the government. And I mean, there's just so many different challenges that they're gonna run into. How are they gonna run prisons? How are they gonna deal with workers trying to unionize? What recourse do you have as a citizen if you're accused unfairly in one of these places of something, right? Like, how do you in any way protect yourself against a powerful private interest? It's just, there's just so many different problems that happen. So on paper, this may sound like a good idea, but just you let human beings into it, and then they just like start forming little groups. They start figuring out what's to their advantage, and pretty soon it just becomes a dystopian nightmare for those people that are under this private system.
Very true, and I think in so many ways you said it like there's an attempt to try to take advantage of a public good for profit, and then the externalities are and the negative consequences are what the public gets left with, and a lot of the populations that would be displaced in this case and probably other cases would be communities of color, right? Probably a lot of native peoples from the Caribbean, as well as Afro descendants
Yeah,
who.
there's a lot of land
Yeah.
that is not developed, but it's land that it's owned by native people that are Afro descendants.
Mhm.
The developments that are more geared for tourists, those you can see a mile away. Those are very clearly developed, and they're there to attract tourists, and that's where you stay. But as you drive through the island, you can see that there's just so much land that's not developed, and that might be part of the reason why it's so attractive to them as well, because they figure we'll get in there, and then over time we can scoop up a lot of this land because when you're poor and somebody's dangling like a piece of gold in front of you, and that can feed your family for 6 months or a year, it starts becoming tempting, and it's very difficult to for them to say no. I'll hold on to my land where the land itself is just underdeveloped. But naturally, that's how you get concentration of wealth and concentration of landowners, because they come in with so much money that they're able to dispossess everyone else, just because it's an unfair advantage. They can buy up everything, and
Yep.
and you're dealing with a corrupt government in Honduras that in the first place they're even allowing this to happen. I mean, that tells you in itself how the governments are so corrupt that they think that this is a good idea. So the people that are getting in here, I mean, they probably they'll present the fact that the governments are corrupt and that they're doing this as an alternative. But in reality, in what they're probably thinking is, yeah, the governments are so corrupt that once we get in there, we can bribe them and we can get our way. We can get more accommodations. We're saying right now that we're not going to expand, but eventually we know that if we want to, we could, because we just have to give enough money to these officials and they'll give it to us. So again, just exploitation and colonization.
It's a neo-colonization. And I think now the fact that, and I think in some ways it's interesting because I think a lot of these folks, the people who potentially would live and invest in this type of community, were probably already kind of those digital nomads, the people that could work from anywhere. But I think now that because of the pandemic and the fact that people now see, oh, you know what, I can work from anywhere in the world. And, if I have a internet connection, I can work from Caribbean paradise. So why not invest in a property out here?
Hmm.
So I know that in some ways that's also something that's happened before, but maybe now there's a lot more a lot more people that are attuned to those types of opportunities. I know that a similar effect is happening in Puerto Rico, where after the devastation of the hurricanes there as well, they're trying to there's an influx of American and investment from other parts. Part of it is sheltering money, part of it is just trying to make their investment work. So unfortunately, that could have the negative impact of displacing a lot of people and making the island unaffordable for a lot of the local population. Again, just like what happens in just gentrification, but this would be gentrification at a larger scale.
Yeah. And by the way, there was also an article that came out a few months ago where this was being considered here in Las Vegas, where private companies like Google or Amazon would go into Vegas and they would get their own private area where they could set up their own private governments run
I
by the
I thought
corporations.
Sapos had done that. I thought that was actually a model. I know that I thought there was a city nearby where that actually happened or is happening.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that one. But the one that I read was this is something that could be coming. So
Mm.
you're already starting to see these things. And by the way, my prediction is that these enclaves, private enclaves, I think you will start seeing them more and more. And the main reason is again because these governments are corrupt. They're not as strong. They have a history of being able to suppress the will of the people. And when that money comes in and it's attractive enough, the governments will hand over the land. And then these private enclaves will take hold. So this one right here, it seems like it's getting some pushback. It may or may not happen. It may or may not be successful. But I think we're looking here at what the future is of,
Mhm.
or at least for the next few decades. There's so much private money, and there's so many people, like you said, just the ability to work remotely now is going to drive this, because so many people are going to say, well, why do I need to stay in the US? I just move to Roatan and live on a beautiful island and just work and connect to my employer in another country if it's not there. So yeah, I think these things will at some point become the norm.
And you're right. I think it was the governor of Arizona who recently talked about having innovation zones and doing the type of similar policies to try to encourage tech companies to come to Nevada and work from there. So yeah, so I think it is a trend that we're probably going to see in the years to come. So we'll see how it goes. So if you got money, Herrero, start getting it ready so you can invest in one of your beautiful properties in Roatan.
No, I'm going to oppose these things. I know they're coming, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop opposing them. There's just these things are terrible. There's just so many different things that are going to go wrong with them. And once you give the authority of a government to a private company, I think just living under that system, it's hard for a lot of people to imagine it right now, but it's not going to be good. It's going to be a lot worse than what we have now.
I think
So,
the libertarians listeners will probably think that, well, it's the people that give government power, so it's actually better that it stays at the individual and corporation level because they can be a little bit more efficient with that, right? They can manage it better and
I
work
mean,
it better.
in theory, yeah, but the problem is that if you don't have any controls to limit the size of these companies, to limit the amount of money, if you don't have anything to balance that out, you're just gonna get imbalances, and the power is gonna become concentrated. So even though these things may start out as an honest effort to try to improve society, inevitably, if you don't have the checks and balances, they're going to get out of hand. And I'm not seeing from these guys how they're going to make it so that once you set up a few of these and they're successful, how they don't just buy up the entire land on the island, right? Who's going to check them? If it's a private government, are we supposed to believe that they're going to check themselves? You need an independent entity to also come in and be able to somehow regulate them. But now you're talking about them being under the control of a government. But that's the whole point. They're trying to avoid being under the control of a government. So by default, these things are not going to be regulated. There's not going to be a check on how much they can exploit if they decide to do so, or how much they can expand, because they have the money, and they have the money to buy out politicians and to suppress the will of the people, even if the people are speaking out against this. So that, I mean, the libertarians, in theory, yeah, it could work, but in practice, I think there's just too many problems with it.
Yeah, good point. I think it is about balance and about getting to that sweet spot where you can create economic opportunity, but also there's a collective buy-in and collective will to take care of the things that you need to take care of, like infrastructure, your schooling, taking care of the environment, and sort of all those things that we all directly and indirectly benefit from.
Yep. All right. So I think we can leave it at that. Anything else regarding this?
No, that's it. Thanks for listening to our conversation. We're trying to bring you some interesting topics that we see tied to a lot of the conversations that we've been having. I think next time we can talk about cryptocurrencies and what is it? NFTs.
Oh yeah, NFTs, dude. Talk about manias. Yeah, this is the latest one. Yeah, we can go into NFTs. I'll try to break them down as best as I can.
Yes, because I'm still trying to comprehend, wrap my head around the whole cryptocurrency. But it's the wave of the future. So um, I know that there's another. I think is a cloud. Oh, say I need to do my research for the next conversation.
All right, yeah, we'll save that one for next time. So for anyone listening out there, if you enjoy our content, make sure to check us out. We are Brown Perspective. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Nos vemos.
Ciao.